So, with the camera back, it's time to look back at Bundesliga Matchday 22, which basically provided nothing of relative excitement or interest. And to start with, it makes sense when we talk about excitement and interest to begin with Borussia Dortmund, or the antithesis of those two words. And actually, in what was a tough game coming into this against Mainz, as they'd only lost once under Urs Fischer, not even against Bayern Munich, it was a comfortable win for Borussia Dortmund, and one of their first in a while where they've actually looked quite convincing and comfortable. Suru Guirassy and Maximilian Bayer both scored within the first 15 minutes, which basically rendered the game over. Guirassy then made it a double for him, and then Rami Bensebaini scored right at the end of the game to make it 4-0. And that meant Ryerson, the standout player of this game was Julian Ryerson, who ended it with 4 assists. So he assisted every single goal in what was peak, wing play. Let's just use crosses into the wing from the wing backs in the hope it will work out. But obviously it did, and this again showed why, Niko Kovac plays some serious haram ball. But what it did mean is they did temporarily again close the gap to Bayern to only 3 points. And now we've kind of entered this important period for Dortmund, and it will be a testing one too. So next weekend they play Leipzig, and then the weekend after they play Bayern Munich. In between those games, so this week and next midweek, they play Atalanta in the Champions League. So what this means is, and Dortmund are going into this with not that many senior centre-backs as well, which could be a problem for them. So they're going into this crucial period for basically their season, and they need to perform here. And so if we want to talk about a potential title race between Dortmund and Bayern, this is where the title race either comes into fruition or it dies very quickly, because Leipzig is not an easy game, and then they play Bayern. Luckily the Bayern game is at home, which should give Dortmund a marginal gain, but they are experiencing a bit of an injury crisis in defence. Nico Schlotterbeck's injured, only a minor one, but he'll miss Atalanta. Niklas Süle's injured as well, and obviously on top of that Emre Can is also injured. So in terms of fit natural centre-backs, they only have one senior, and that's Waldemar Anton. The other natural centre-back they have is a child, and the other is Rami Bensebaini, who is not a centre-back by trade. So with those injuries, this makes this next 2 weeks very challenging for Dortmund. And if they're able to overcome it, and the gap to Bayern is 3 points after they played one another, then okay, we are in a title race now. Especially because it'd be March by then as well. But they only temporarily closed the gap because Bayern played Bremen, and as you would expect, considering the form of both sides, Bayern comfortably won. It was 3-0. Harry Kane double, and then Leon Goretzka scored the third. However, Bremen won in the opening 20 minutes. Bremen weren't exactly that bad. It's just, a bit of a common occurrence happened. What has become a common occurrence over the past couple of games is, it's a relatively close game, and then Bayern win a penalty. And that's exactly what happened here. So, against Leipzig in midweek in the Pokal, Bayern won a penalty. The weekend beforehand against Hoffenheim, Bayern won a penalty, and that basically just ends the game immediately. I mean, it's obviously quite ironic and funny, the timing of it, the fact that Bayern are complaining, they complained about the decision making in the Hamburg game, and then the next 3 games in a row, they get a penalty awarded to them each time. Now, I'm not saying this Bremen one and the one at Leipzig weren't penalties, because they were, but obviously the Hoffenheim one clearly up for debate about the whole thing. But obviously the 3-0 win now means Harry Kane is currently on course to match Robert Lewandowski's record of 41 goals in a 34-game season. The caveat to this is Lewandowski did it in 8 penalties throughout the whole season and in 29 games. Harry Kane is on 8 penalties or is on 9 penalties already. So you can make the argument, oh, Lewandowski just hung around the goal or whatever and tapped it in, and Harry Kane's a lot more dynamic. Okay, in overall play sense, yeah, fair enough. In consideration of how they are getting their goals, though, yeah, no, they're in 2 completely different worlds in terms of what they're actually doing, like output-wise. And that's why I've said repeatedly, and I stand by it, if Harry Kane breaks the Lewandowski goal-scoring record, the game is gone, especially when he does it with like 13 penalties in a season. Then they're on elsewhere on Saturday. Leverkusen beat St. Pauli 4-0. Leverkusen have looked rather unconvincing in the early stages of this calendar year, so since the return of the winter break. I mean, even wins against Werder Bremen, they weren't that good, but they managed to win comfortably, albeit like St. Pauli are struggling, like very much so. But it is a big win for Leverkusen. In fact, they're back into the Champions League spots now after they were kind of like dangling around the outside of it beforehand. Oh no, they're not. Oh, they're still dangling around outside of it, but they're only 3 points behind Stuttgart. So it is close between Stuttgart, Leverkusen and Leipzig, and so whatever, it is important that Leverkusen keep winning. But again, as I said, it was against a struggling St. Pauli side. So it's not as if like, well, granted, actually, Stuttgart lost to this struggling St. Pauli side last week. But, you know, they need to keep going. The goals came from Jarrell Quansah, Patrick Schick, Edmund Tapsoba and Ernest Poku. And obviously Leverkusen also in action in midweek in the playoff against Olympiacos. Obviously, not a couple of weeks ago, they lost to Olympiacos in the league phase. However, I think the Leverkusen have shown that they're good enough to beat Olympiacos. Like on their day, they should be beating Olympiacos. End of. The problem is with both Dortmund and Leverkusen in the playoffs is that one of them, if they both progress, is guaranteed to face Bayern Munich in the next round, which for the coefficient ranking is not ideal. And then Frankfurt, again, we're seeing a lot of big scorelines in this early few games. I mean, Frankfurt beat Gladbach 3-0. This was Albert Riera's first win as Frankfurt head coach. This is also Frankfurt's first clean sheet since I think the 13th of December when they played Augsburg, which should tell you everything you need to know. But there's Ansgar Knauf, Nathaniel Brown, and a name which is generally I have no idea how to say it, and I don't want to say it in case I butcher it so badly, it's offensive. But Aymuni Ekuyab scored his second goal for Frankfurt. He obviously joined in the winter. Callum Winder did go off injured. However, it seems to be not as serious as first thought. Not that it matters because Frankfurt are literally just in the Bundesliga now. Well, for Gladbach, I think they're now they're in the trenches. I think they're 6 games winless. Their last win was against Augsburg. If they're not 6 games winless, that was only their only win in recent time. They're only 3 points off the relegation zone. Since Eugen Polanski was made head coach, he's only averaged 1 point per game. It's not looking good, I can't lie. That 1 point per game puts him as one of the worst Gladbach managers ever. Do I think Gladbach will sack Polanski between now and the end of the season? No. Do I think it's a topic that could be and will be revisited in the winter or in the summer? I mean, yes. I think it looked questionable at the time, but it looks more kind of questionable now. Why they decided to give him like a 3-year contract. I think it should have just been until the end of the season and then you assess it. Obviously, hindsight's a wonderful thing, and you can say this now that Gladbach could be genuinely horrible, but you know they could sleepwalk into a relegation fight. Well, they're in it, but the way they're going, they could sleepwalk even further deeper into it, which is a problem. But what may help them is the fact that teams below them are significantly worse. And speaking of a team who have actually now escaped the relegation fight, albeit maybe temporarily, is Hamburg. They beat Union Berlin 3-2, which now means Hamburg are 9th, meaning probably for the first time in 9 years or whatever, they're back in the top 5 of the Bundesliga, as in like the top half of the Bundesliga. They took a 2-0 lead the 2-1 lead in at half time, a questionable awarding of the first penalty to Union, which Leopold Querfeld scored. Ransford Königsdorfer secured the win in the 82nd minute, and then Andrei Ilic kind of put it at risk in the 89th minute. But goal scoring has been a bit of a problem for Hamburg. But I mean, Robert Glatzel played for 72 minutes, and Frankfurt did look a better team. So who would have thought, when you're playing with an actual recognised striker, you do play a bit better. And it worked, and they managed to get the best out of Ransford Königsdorfer. And yeah, as I said, Hamburg have shown enough that they should not be getting relegated now. Obviously, it doesn't mean they should get complacent and coast until the end of the season, because as we've seen, you could quite easily be sucked into the relegation fight. But they have shown that they have enough quality to stay up, which, everyone likes that. Then the other game on Saturday, or the final Saturday afternoon game, should I say, was Hoffenheim against Freiburg. Again, a comfortable win for Hoffenheim. Freiburg never really caused them any issues. They did consolidate third place in the Bundesliga with that win. An interesting goal, which didn't count. That was Andrej Kramarić's right in the first half, right at the beginning. The ball's headed towards him, and from just outside of the centre circle in Freiburg's half, he manages to lob Noah Atubolu. However, Atubolu, or Kramarić's backside, was offside, so it didn't count. Then the late Saturday game was Stuttgart against Cologne. Stuttgart won this 3-1, but they did not make it easy for themselves. Elmander Demirovic scored an early goal, and Stuttgart really, for the rest of the 75 minutes, they should have doubled their lead. Like, they had plenty of chances to kill the game off, but they didn't. And then playing out of the back, mistake from Jeff Chabot allowed Ragnar Acker to equalise, and then you thought, oh great, Stuttgart have bottled this. But they ended up overcoming the wobble. Elmander Demirovic scored his second of the game to make it 2-1, and then Dennis Undav in stoppage time made it 3-1 to secure the win. And that win meant Stuttgart went into fourth. They are 2 points clear of Leipzig, 3 points clear of Leverkusen, but also 3 points behind Hoffenheim. They obviously could overtake Hoffenheim eventually, but they are also in European action in midweek. They play Celtic in the conference in the Europa League, which, regardless of Celtic's league form this season, they've clearly improved. And so, as I said, I'm a big proponent of Stuttgart winning the Europa League, and I think they can do it. But they have shown, especially in the Europa League, that there are times they could be caught lacking. And we even saw with Bayern Munich last season in the Champions League that, against Celtic, you can be caught lacking, and it could have consequences if you're not aware of what the hell's going on. Sunday, Augsburg beat Heidenheim 1-0. It'd be better for me and you that there's not a lot said about this. Alexis Claude-Maurice scored the penalty. It now means Augsburg have only lost one of their last 5 games, and that was against Mainz last weekend. Then the final Sunday game was Leipzig against Wolfsburg. It finished 2-2. Leipzig really should have won this. They were too wasteful in attack, and Kamil Grabara was putting in a very good performance, really. However, he, a bit like Icarus, he flew too close to the sun. A playing out of the back mistake led to Jan Diamande equalising once Brian Gruder got the ball, played it to Gruder, or Diamande, who played it past Grabara. And then Gruder himself, when it looked like Wolfsburg had actually nicked a point, Gruder actually scored a well-taken finish to make it 2-2. But looking at the XG of this game, Leipzig were very unlucky in this game. They should have won. It didn't help that Grabara was on demon time. He made 8 saves, for example. But again, they were also quite just wasteful in front of goal. Obviously, Leipzig were also in action in midweek in the DFB Pokal. So that would have been in their legs too. So again, we look at the table now. As I said, Bayern 6 points clear of Dortmund in first, Hoffenheim at third on 45. Then you've got a bit of a 3-way fight between Stuttgart, Leipzig and Leverkusen for the final Champions League spot. Only 3 points separates them. Hell of a fight for one Champions. Well, again, fifth could become a Champions League spot. we have to caveat that. As things looking, it looks likely that the fifth will be a Champions League spot for Germany. But obviously there's no guarantees, so you have to finish fourth. And I think a good set of teams to be fighting for the Champions League spot. And people are like, well, there's no competition, and this shows that there is. What also shows there's competition is the relegation fight. And the fact there's only 3 points between 13th and 16th, and 4 points between 12th and 16th too. Like, as I said previously, and I said last week, it's anyone's game. Anyone can go down, apart from anyone could go in the relegation playoff. It's looking likely that St. Pauli and Heidenheim will be going down unless some miraculous thing happens. Then it's just an all-out scrap between Wolfsburg, Mainz, Bremen, Gladbach, and probably even Cologne if they continue on the trajectory they're on too. Or in the fixtures next week, as I've said, this is a big one. The next 2 weeks will probably be season defining in a way. Bayern play Frankfurt, Leipzig play Dortmund later on, so Bayern set the momentum this time, or set the pace this time. If they win, for example, then Dortmund have to close the gap back to 6 points. But again, if they lose, Dortmund have the chance to close it to 3. And next weekend, they obviously play in the Klassiker. And so this is where the title race either lives or dies. Obviously, Frankfurt, a completely different team now, and compared to how they played in the previous meeting between the two, especially because Albert Riera is now the head coach. I think it will be very interesting to see if they're a lot more pragmatic against Bayern. Obviously, Riera has shown he's also a bit of a character in terms of like his press conferences and stuff, so I think it will be interesting. Obviously, Kompany and Riera share the fact that they both played for Manchester City at one point. They did not cross paths, however. They would have crossed paths in England when Riera was at Liverpool, but not at Manchester City. Obviously, Riera, as I've said, he's shown to be a bit of a character, so I think whatever he says in this pre-match press conference will be of interest. Obviously, for Dortmund, they have drawn the short straw because they play Atalanta in midweek, Leipzig, and then they play Atalanta again, and then they play Bayern. And looking at the fixtures after this game, after the Dortmund game or the Klassiker, there's not that many more, especially with the form that Bayern have been on. There's not that many chances for Bayern to potentially drop points. Obviously, there could be a game like Augsburg or Hamburg, for example. With Leipzig's current or Bayern's current form, it doesn't look likely that could happen. So that's why I'm saying these next 2 weeks will be title race defining. Either the title race actually exists, or the title race was just the friends we made along the way. Because this could die. Next week I could be talking about how the fact Bayern are 9 points clear and the title race is all but dead, really. Or flip side, next week Dortmund are 3 points behind Bayern now, or 4 potentially if they Bayern draw. So it will be interesting to see what happens, and this will define what happens now for the rest of the year. Other games include Leverkusen versus Union Berlin, Hoffenheim play Cologne. On Friday night it's Mainz versus Hamburg, and then the standout game really on Saturday, Sunday is at the bottom, and that's between St. Pauli and Werder Bremen. If St. Pauli win this, they can leapfrog Bremen, while if Bremen win this, they could actually get out of the relegation zone. All that for them to draw the game and go nowhere. So that is it for this week. Let me know what you think about the title race, if it is there, if it exists, or if it's all just in our mind, and anything else that interested you.